student. I love birds of prey, and particularly the osprey, because it's one that's close to home. I live in Rutland and have this on my back door, so I have ospreys flying over my garden in the summer, which is the coolest thing ever. But first, one of the first things I learned when I came to this uni was that nobody actually knows where Rutland is, or that it is a thing. So Rutland, if you ever wanted to visit, it's 330 miles from Falmouth in the East Midlands. It's a small county next to Leicestershire, and it is the best county ever. It's home to quaint little chocolate box villages, amazing stately homes, Susan Burley House, historic buildings, Normanton Church, which is actually on the water, but of course it's home to the Rutland Osprey project. So before I carry on, I just want to point out it's World Osprey Week this week. So all over the globe, there's over 100 schools on 3 continents who are celebrating ospreys. And we are too. So yeah, just that can make you feel nice and fuzzy while we're doing this. Anyway, what is so great about ospreys? So not only are they cool because they're found in my home county, and they're a really cool native species anyway, they're really interesting physiologically. So they're zygodactylic, which basically means, and there was a reason for this talk, that they have 2 forward-facing and 2 backward-facing talons, which makes them expert fish hunters. They also have these amazing migration routes that have been plotted over not that long ago, because they've only just started realising that they can use this satellite technology to see where they go in the winter, because before they knew they went to these places, but they weren't entirely sure how they got there, which route they took. And they are also just beautiful birds. There's something sort of really reptilian about them, and they're stunning. This is actually a chick, but the adults also have that amazing golden eye. So yeah, they're beautiful. But another reason why I love ospreys so much is that they have formed these incredible communities both here and in Africa. So these are actually children in the Senegal and Gambia who have linked with schools in Rutland, and this week they'll be FaceTiming each other and doing like little talks, sharing little songs and stuff. So it's made this amazing sort of culture with these ospreys, and they don't even know it because they're ospreys. But we know that they've made these amazing communities, and also they've provided opportunities for people like myself to get into science communication and to talk to people about ospreys and learn about ospreys. So yeah, they're really great. So the reserve itself, Rutland Water, if you've not been, you must go because it's really cool there. This is the whole reserve, which is joint managed by Anglian Water and the Leicestershire and Rutland Wildlife Trust. It's a SSSI, an SBA, a Ramsar site, and it's internationally important for wintering wildfowl. So it's not just about the ospreys at Rutland Water, it's about so many other birds. And the bird fair as well. Has anyone been to bird fair before? No, you should. Everyone should go to bird fair, it's amazing. It's called the Glastonbury for birders. So if you like birds, go to bird fair. And bird fair's held in those fields up there. Really cool. The water opened in 1976. And since then it's been this amazing reserve. The Rutland Osprey project isn't actually based at the wildlife reserve, so what we were just looking at is the big red circle, and the squash circle is actually the Rutland Osprey project where it's based. The ospreys don't know that, they go all over the water, so if you go you can find them everywhere. So ospreys have actually been recorded at the water quite early on in its history, because it's a really useful migration stop-off for them as they travel back from the Gambia up to Lochgarten. Lochgarten's where the first ospreys in the UK bred again in 1954 after being made extinct in the 1800s. So basically, as an osprey is flying towards the East Midlands, it sees this. Not literally, there aren't trout that big in Rutland Water, and there aren't giant sofas ready for the ospreys, but they see it as a really important stop-off point, and for the weary traveller, they're basically seeing this. So it's a really nice service station for them, effectively. And Tim Appleton, who is a legend at Rutland Water, he's been working there for over 40 years and only retired 2 years ago. And he really wanted to attract these birds to the water. So in 1986, he put up an nesting platform like this one. This isn't the one, but it's effectively the same thing, on Lax Hill, which is here on the reserve, right next to the nature reserve. It's a really nice high point on the reserve for the ospreys, really good vantage point for hunting, fishing, good access. Unfortunately for Tim, it was unsuccessful. So for almost 10 years, the ospreys stopped but just kept going. They didn't want to breed at Rutland Water. 1994, one young female did stay, but she didn't come again the next year, so that was kind of a dead end. But unperturbed by this, Tim continued to put up platforms, but they decided that a more proactive approach was needed, and thus came forward the Rutland Osprey project. So Roy Dennis, does anyone know who Roy Dennis is or heard of him? No? He is a legend. He has done so much Osprey work even before the Rutland Osprey project began. So he wrote the proposal in 1996 to bring ospreys back to Rutland water. Before then, he's done loads of work with satellite tagging ospreys. He actually made the colouring scheme, which allows us to identify individual ospreys. He's brought sea eagles back to Ireland, golden eagles back to Ireland. He's done loads and loads of stuff with bird of prey introductions. And there's Tim Appleton, who is also a legend, who has only recently retired from Rutland Water, but he's still there every day. I think he lives somewhere on the reserve, but I don't know, he's just always there. So it took 18 months from deciding that they wanted ospreys at the water to the ospreys actually being translocated. And they had to be moved 440 miles from the Eastern Highlands of Scotland, so somewhere like this, all the way down to Rutland Water. And this was all overseen by Roy Dennis, who knew nests in eastern Scotland intimately, because he'd been studying them for years and years and years. So he knew which nests they could take chicks from. And over a course of 5 years, between 1996 and 2001, they translocated 64 ospreys. And this is 64 ospreys because I copied and pasted it all in. So you might think that sounds like a lot of ospreys for one water. But when you think about their migration, lots unfortunately do die on migration, and others just travel elsewhere. So when they were brought to the water, they were placed in these special release pens, and this is an actual picture from, I think, the first group of release ospreys, put in groups of 3, which replicated the natural conditions of the Erie. Normally there'd be about 2 or 3 chicks. So they were put in these release pens, and they were heavily monitored by volunteers who were in a caravan nearby. And that's about the only time we could be in a caravan watching something that intensely without it being weird. And they were watching them to make sure they weren't going to get ill. They actually had a vet from London Zoo who came and took regular fecal samples to make sure that there was nothing wrong with them at all. They were going to be 100% ready for when they were released. Near a release time, so after 2 or 3 weeks of getting fed trout and looked after really, really well, they were put into groups again, different groups, according to which ones were ready to go and which needed a bit more time. And they were also fitted with radio tags. So this one on the left is like one they use in falconry. It's just a tail mount, short range transmitter, so they could be tracked around the reserve. They knew where they were and their movements. And then over the course of the project, they also had 14 individuals fitted with backpack transmitters, which allow us to see their migration routes like these. So this is actually 30, an osprey at Rutland, which has come back to Rutland today. So his migration route is the green one from this year. So that one going down was him leaving. So now, I should have done this morning and changed the PowerPoint. There'll be one of him going back. So yeah, it's revealed some amazing things about their migration routes, such as they like to go over that point of land there, the Iberian Peninsula, is it? I don't know, I should have checked. So yeah, we didn't know that before, so we are learning these things. And when they were released, the side of the pens were opened, and apparently some took hours to leave, they didn't want to go, and some just left straight away. And they were tracked all around the reserve by volunteers for the 5 years to make sure they weren't running into trouble, they were being well fed, and that they were ready to migrate, which they did. Some, obviously, they all went down to Africa, and they sort of spend 2 years in Africa establishing a territory so that when they return again after breeding, they don't have to fight for food or space. They can just go back and have a nice holiday, basically. And some have also spread across the UK. So we've had males, and I think 1 female now, that have gone over to the Diffie Osprey project, which was set up in 2005. So they're helping to recolonise the whole of the UK, not just Rutland. So yeah, these are amazing migration routes. So the success of the project isn't just in the fact that we're getting all this data from the backpacks and we're seeing all these birds coming back to the water, but I think one of the icons of the project is 0397, also known as Mr. Rutland. So he is a really cool dude. He is one of the first birds that was released at the water in 1997, and he came back in 2001. And he was the first bird back of all the translocated ones, so it was a really exciting time to see that not only were the ospreys getting to Africa and back, but they were choosing to come back to Rutland specifically to breed. And during his time at the water, he has bred with 3 females, giving 32 chicks, and lived till he was 18 years old, so he only didn't return in 2016. So between 2001 and 2014, he gave us these chicks. Came back in 2015 for a sort of retirement year, just like one last year at Rutland Water, and then we didn't see him ever again. His ring hasn't been located, so we just assumed he could have died at some point along the migration route or somewhere in Western Africa. But again, he's not the only indicator of the success of the project. As you can see, from 2001 to last year, the number of breeding pairs has sort of increased every year, and the number of fledged young has also increased. And it's contributed massively to local economy. So we've got beers being made, we've got literally boatloads of people going to see the ospreys every year. They have these osprey cruises that they do around the water. They pay £30 per person to go on one of these cruises. And almost every evening they're packed full for the whole of the summer. So the project is just amazingly successful. And another amazing thing about this project is that it could have had a lot of controversy with the local trout farmer, who is placed very unfortunately for a trout farmer, and the ospreys soon found these trout ponds that were full of nice big trout. But instead of getting upset about this and wanting the ospreys to leave, he decided to capitalise upon this, and he built a hide like this one you can see here. And he charges an absolute premium for you to go and take pictures of ospreys at the water level, but it works. He gets the money, and he's actually making profits where he was before making losses. So this project is working amazingly with local communities and the local farmers, and it's just like a really lovely, successful project. And again, the schools in Gambia and in Rutland as well just everyone's gaining from it. No one is losing. The ospreys are amazing. So kind of like the legends behind it, you've already been introduced to Roy Dennis and Tim Appleton. They're both really, really notable figures, not just in osprey conservation, but in bird conservation worldwide. Tim Appleton, he's a global ambassador for saving wetlands. He founded Bird Fair, which is also a really cool international conservation project in itself. So the ticket sales for Bird Fair go towards BirdLife International. Last year they raised £330,000, which was sent to BirdLife International, to all kinds of different conservation projects abroad, and this happens every year. So every year they're getting this kind of money for conservation, so he's a really cool guy. And then also Dr. Tim McCrill, who is one of my personal heroes. I kind of fangirl every time I see him, but try and act to be cool. So I don't want him to think I'm a weirdo. But he's kind of like, he started at the Rutland Osprey project in 1997, so in the middle of these translocations, age 15, as a volunteer. He soon became the manager of the project, and he's only just stepped down as manager of the Osprey project and is setting up his own charity, the Osprey Leadership Award, which is helping get young people into conservation. And he's also working with Roy Dennis on even more translocations. I think last year they translocated ospreys to Poole Harbour, so that was just another one of their projects. And last time I spoke to him, it sounds like he's got loads more exciting stuff to come. So they are all awesome. But the main thing about the Rutland Osprey project is that it opens up all these sort of ideas that it's kind of exciting to think about the future of reintroductions. I know lots of people talk about rewilding, and lots of people have different opinions on what that means. But this project shows that reintroductions can and do work. It doesn't have to be this massive controversial thing. It can be so successful. And I also hope that this talk has inspired you to be bold in your approach to conservation, like the people behind the Rutland Osprey project were, because without them, all of those amazing things you've just seen haven't happened. So thank you very much, and if you've got any questions, you take them. Any questions? Yes.
Have there been any of the locals having a problem with the ospreys at all?
No, I think when they started the project, that was a massive focus for them, because obviously Rutland is quite a big farming community, and farmers, don't be careful what I say, farmers can be difficult because a lot of them are from the older generation and they don't accept change as readily as the younger farmers do. So they work a lot with the local farmers, and when you see them, they have all these sort of networking events, so they'll approach farmers in pubs and stuff, instead of being all sort of like condescending and it's the wildlife trust versus like the farming community. They kind of work with them, like you saw at Hornmill Trout Farm. It's kind of, there's that really nice relationship which is quite unusual for an introduction project, but yeah, I don't think there's been anyone that's sort of massively hated the ospreys, so yeah.
Okay, yeah, can we have a round of applause for Amy?